So, yeah, my name is Mr. Stock. I am a German teacher in the IB section since the beginning of Mémoire, really. So, as such, I present the extended essay in German B, but more broadly also in language B in general, because anything that I say for German would also apply to other languages in language B area. So, an extended essay in German B is definitely an opportunity for a student to pursue their interest in the language, but also in the target culture, so any German-speaking country. It is really important to note that it always has to be connected to the language. So you couldn't just do like something about German history or German, I don't know what, like the political system or something like this. It has to be connected to language in some way or form. Okay, so the IB gives us 3 different categories where you can do your extended essay in language B or German B in. So the first one would be a specific analysis of the language. So you really look at one aspect of the language that you're studying, usually related to a cultural context or some specific text, for example. A classic in language B there would be, for example, looking at a dialect or a regional variety of a language. The second category, there we have actually 2 different aspects, or like subcategories. That's the analysis of a cultural nature and its impact on the language. So that could be, first of all, the impact of a cultural change on language. For example, you could look at how social media changes the language of German teenagers nowadays, or you could also look at specific artifacts. That's the second subcategory. For example, an artifact could be an advertising campaign, it could be a set of songs, it could be a set of newspaper articles in the target language. And the third large category, and maybe the most obvious one, is literature analysis. So you look at a work of literature from the target language and you analyze an aspect of it. So first of all, you should always look at something that is somehow situated in one end of the different topic areas. So in German B, you have 5 large topic areas. So find something that fits in there. Ideally, maybe something you've seen in class already and that you want to go into more detail or just into more depth on this. It should be, like in any other subject as well, something that is workable, clearly focused, specific, and you should be able to answer your research question in 4,000 words. So it shouldn't be too narrow, so you actually struggle to write 4,000 words, and shouldn't be too broad, because also while 4,000 words might seem a lot when you start working on your extended essay, in the end, if you really go into much detail and depth on something, it's not that much after all. One way of doing it, which I always like, is when you look at the SMART, the SMART objectives. I don't know, maybe you've heard about it before. So SMART always means that something is, the S is for something specific. You have a specific question. The M is it's measurable. Okay, so you actually need to base yourself on something where you can actually find and measure something. So how could that work in language B? For example, don't say you're gonna analyze a certain novel. For example, The Wall of the Women, and then when you start reading it, I'm making a bit simplified here. You start reading it and there's no women in the novel. Okay, so it needs to be measurable. You actually need to find something, or your sources need to provide the information you give. So that's SMA. It's achievable for you. Okay, don't make it too difficult. Don't come up with a research question that all the doctors and professors haven't found a solution for yet. It needs to be relevant, that's the R. So like I said before, don't make it too narrow, don't make it too obvious, make it into something that's also interesting to read. And the T stands for time-based, so you could either say, like I said before, the 4,000 words fit in there, or also the time that you actually have that this is realistic for you to achieve in a certain timeline, the time you have to. So if you think extended essay, usually you're supposed to put 40 hours of work in there, including seeing a supervisor, doing your research, writing it. So base your research question around this. So good questions, bad questions. The examples is like in other subjects as well. The bad example is usually what students come up with that's far too broad. Okay, don't come up with a research question that's called a history of rap music in Germany or something like this. Okay, far too broad. You can never treat that in 4,000 words. It's just too much. Find something specific. So, for example, what I've written down here, rap music. How is immigrant culture reflected in nowadays in rap music? And you base yourself on one musician and kind of some of his songs and how he represents immigrant culture. That could be something. And there you also have the link with language, how and target culture. Another bad research question: the role of women in German literature. Okay, it's just far too broad. Like you can't read all the books on there, but if you look at a certain novel, for example, I have written down Die verlorene Ehre der Katharina Blum by Heinrich Böll. You can nicely look at the evolution of the role of women in post-war Germany and a bit throughout the 20th century. So that's something that's quite specific and achievable. Don't come with a research question that just says, okay, an analysis and description of Swiss German, if you want to do cultural variety. Far too broad, far too much put in there. Use something specific. You could come up with an artifact, for example, advertising campaign with Swiss German, and look at this and how they use spoken Swiss German in written form. So be specific and use specific text really as your basis for that. So that'd be my advice for good and bad research questions. I do something like in general, like not just language B, is find something that you're actually keen on, something that you're maybe even passionate about. This is going to be the largest piece of work that you've done in your academic career so far. So don't actually find yourself with a topic that doesn't really interest you. It makes it so much harder to put all the work and time and effort into this. And really connected to this, and something that in my experience is really difficult and IB students often get wrong is put the work in early. It helps you so much later. So what I mean by this is really put in the work and researching, reflecting on what's your research question, what kind of sources do you want to use. Because there's nothing worse than finding yourself in the middle of your extended essay process and realizing, oh, actually that's not working. I have to completely change it, or I'm actually not really interested in this. I would rather do something else. And this is usually due to the students like kind of not putting the work in early, because it seems quite simple at the beginning. Just say, okay, I just come up with a topic, I just come up with a question that works, and then I'll take it from there. But then you'll have problems afterwards, and you have to do double the work afterwards if you realize, okay, at some point throughout the work on the extended essay, you have to completely change something or large parts of it because they don't work the way you intended to. So go in early. My tips and warnings for a language B extended essay. An obvious one is obviously you have to do it in the target language, so you really have to be at ease and proficient in the language. It's not just about writing it, but it's also about researching, reading your sources. They all have to be in the target language. So if you're not actually at ease in German or Spanish or English, that'll make it so much harder. Writing your extended essay in a foreign language, in language B, can also be an advantage because examiners tend to be a bit more lenient just because they already appreciate that you did something in a language that is not your own. So I wouldn't say that they don't look at content and stuff, but you have a bit of a few few extra points, so to say, already, because you attempted something really complex and really difficult in a foreign language for you. An advantage from my experience of doing a language B essay, extended essay, especially in one of the, so to say, minority languages, so like German or Spanish, French to a certain extent for the non-French speakers at our school, is that not many students actually do an extended essay. So it's very easy for you to find a supervisor that is not overloaded with lots of other extended essays that they need to supervise, which is also a lot of work for them. And they don't do it very often, so they might actually be very keen on helping you out with that, rather than in other subjects where they always have like too many students wanting to do it, and they actually have to maybe pick and choose who can do it. So this won't happen to you when you do it in one of the smaller languages B here in Florimo. Yeah, and lastly, my tip as well would be what I said at the beginning already, is try to find something that actually links in with what you did in class, because it helps you a lot to actually, you already have a solid base. You and your teacher, you kind of know already what you've talked about it. It's much higher chance that your teacher really knows quite about it, rather than, for example, if you want to do a novel that you haven't treated in class, so then maybe the teacher actually has to read the novel so it can help you first of all. So maybe try to use something that you did in class and extend it, and just take it as a starting point.
All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.